Good afternoon, learners. I am Dr. Subodh Kesharwani. I welcome you all on behalf of myself and on behalf of School of Management Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University. We are here with a very interesting topic, that is communication. Or rather, I can say it is due to communication we are interacting with you today. This course is, the presentation we have today is for the MCOM student, and this is part of the course MCO1, Organization, Theory and Behavior, which is a sub-part of the course Group Behavior. If we go into the definition of communication, communication is the process by which information, ideas or opinions are exchanged between individuals through a mutually understood language or symbol. It is the lifeblood of modern commercial and industrial world. The image, efficiency and success of a modern business depends on the standard of its communication services. So communication is very important in management. It facilitates in communicating with the subordinates, with the top levels. It facilitates in decision makings and many other activities. We have with us expert in this area, Professor Akhilesh Mishra. Professor Akhilesh Mishra is from Amity Business School, Noida. He had a vast experience in HRs, strategies and other areas. He will today share with us his views on this topic, communication.
Yeah.
Professor Akhilesh Mishra ji.
Good afternoon, viewers, students across the other centers. It is very interesting to take a note that communication has its significance in day-to-day dealing with the any kind of management practices that being dealt with, the whether it is the internal customer or the external customer, or maybe the superior subordinate interaction. All are very much dependent on the communication and the pattern of communication. Before that, we would like to see to it that what sort of scenario the workplace, especially when you people are going to some way or the other interact with the people at organizations, you will find that basically the kind of the interaction that is some way or the other influenced by the certain factors that we need to consider into the practices. So there are certain factors that have been found to be very much influencing the communication pattern at workplace. We will take up one by one. First, you will find that the heightened global competition, the trend which is emerging in the current business scenario, where you find that how the people are coming together from various the cultures and interacting and on the same platform. So under such circumstances, it becomes essential that we need to take into consideration how the communication medium has been understood by the people at work. That is very important. And another thing is that the trend of the system, management system is also changing, where you find the flattened. Earlier you might have gone through the textbooks and all. You find that the communication this organizational structure is basically you find in a hierarchical setup. But the trend have changed, and now you find that we have the flat system of the structure existing in the organizations. Especially we can take up the example of Japanese firms, where you find this kind of trend which is emerging. Even you find nowadays in the American firms also, and sometimes you find mixed trend is emerging, where also you find the flat management system. So looking into that these structure and the other aspects like team concept is also very much coming into practice. That also you find where people are under different roles, and these roles also some way or the other influence the communication pattern, because communication pattern need to be considered at every point of time, because that can lead and give the direction to the organizational goal that need to be achieved at the end of the day.
Right, even Professor Mishra, what you're talking about, like previously we have a very different kind of approach. Like we have a horizontal hierarchy or
Yeah,
vertical. We have basically a two-way approach. What you were talking about right now, if you see the many outsourcing companies which are coming up with this approach, that is they have a team leader. One is a team leader and people are working into it, and they have a very informal type of relationship with them. So that sometimes facilitates productivity in their working also.
Yeah, so that kind of trend is very much maybe quite visible across the maybe even IT industries and the BPO sector. You find such kind of trend. So likewise, our concern is that we have to see to it that how we can make the communication more effective at workplace.
So one thing I want to know whether this contemporary approach which is coming right now, what you're talking about, this team leader approach and the line hierarchy where everybody is at par and communication will be floated to all the people who are at that level. So the existing organization is going to affect from it, or how this had an impact in the organization.
So for that, yes, it is going to some way or the other affect the communication pattern, but we need to we have to understand that how this model, what sort of model, business, this communication model or the process is there, because process is very much fundamental to any kind of communication, whether whatever the type we are talking about, structure type we are talking about.
Yes.
Within that we have to first understand this how the model works.
Right.
That is
more important, because
so coming to that model, we have to understand that at one point we find the sender is there, and the person who is interested in sharing some ideas, some thoughts with other to the other person. So likewise we have to understand this basic model, how this model facilitates in understanding the communication process. So looking into this, we find that at one point of time there is going to be two ends. At one point end we are going to find the sender, and on the other hand we have the receiver. So within that within this process we will find that sender has some idea. What may he want to communicate, maybe that idea, or maybe that can be developed through his experience. And so what happens that at one has some idea, and at the second stage what we find that sender encodes idea in message. So he will try to come up with some the theme or some thought, and that he want to communicate. So what he will do, then message travels over channel. Channel can be of various kinds. Maybe it can be face to face, where the communication can be received by the receiver. On the other hand, we have other medium also available, like the technology, telephone, or maybe with like we have this visual, we are sending this message to.
It's like that what we are saying right now. We are sitting in the studio and we are imparting the lecture. So we are basically the senders. And
so we have some idea.
Exactly, we have some idea,
and that idea we are.
So one end is the sender, which we are, and other end is the receiver. Who are the MCOM students, who are the learners. So and inside this we have got encoders, or rather we can say machines or tools or technology which can facilitate and bridging the gap between the sender and receivers.
So you will find that this is at one we some way or the other able to send the message across the other person who is the receiver, but in this process it is very important point is that we call it feedback. Feedback is very much important, whether the person has received the information or how he has maybe experienced, or what is the reaction or the response. I hope that our students have already studied there is a stimulus and the response. So ideas are in form of a stimulus that is being sent to the receiver, and receiver has to give response to those maybe information which is being sent by the sender. So feedback is very important aspect of the business communication process. This is the basic model normally being best way to understand the communication process. So this is another very interesting slide which I'm going to showing right now.
So I'm interested again, Professor Mishra. So I want to remind the learners that we have to learn from this last slide that we have one end which is sender and other end is receiver, and inside we have got some technology which is bridging the gap between us and the learners, and we have another approach that is follow-up system, which feedback you people are forgetting. So we have a number. If you have any queries, if you have any problem, you can directly in touch with us. So to make it more agile and more pragmatic. Thank you.
Feedback is very important.
Yeah, that's why. So if you have any problem, you can be in touch with us. We are here to solve your queries. And number is IGNOU Studio phone number is 29532844, 29532845.
So I would like to show a slide to my student, this communication process expanded model, where things have been quite made clear. Where you find the person A, who is a sender, you will find that he has made some information, and those information stimulus he want to communicate to the receiver, person B, and within that the channel we may find a barrier also existing. So you may find how the person is coming up with or framing or designing the stimulus. Normally what we experience at even workplace, how a manager come up with the any thought or idea or the message, so he want to communicate. So you will find that it is something which is a conditioned stimulus. If you have studied in organizational behavior, conditioned stimulus. So communication itself is a conditioned stimulus.
Okay, can you throw more light on stimulus?
This conditioned stimulus is something which is man-made.
Okay.
So how manager design his message, his ideas, and how he is formulated the set of words and organize the words, and how he is going to pass on. Maybe that can be in written form or maybe in verbal form. So it is very much important that manager see to it, so that there must be a clarity of thought to the receiver, so that he can able to understand what exactly is in demand by the manager. So normally it happens many times. We have studies have shown at workplace, normally miscommunication occurs due to the top level not able to design the message properly, or maybe the circular not being written properly. There are certain informations which are missing. So those things that need to be considered, and that are the some way or the other barrier to communication. Those things we will discuss in the coming up slide, and one by one we will like to understand. So there are barriers you will come across. There are different kinds of barriers that are being maybe experienced at workplace. Normally you will find that it is bypassing. Sometime people think, "Arey, these things are normally," people tend to ignore certain things and some information. Normally this becomes a barrier, and this only happens when there is not being proper format of the message being communicated.
Exactly.
So those things. And another point we come across, that limited frame of reference. When the frame of reference may, under which context we want to communicate. Like suppose we are talking about production, or we are talking about marketing, or whether we are talking about some benefits that need to be communicated to the employees. Those things need to be specified to the employees, especially at workplace. And when we fail to do so, then we find that a strike at workplace and so many problems, demands not fulfilled, because we have to match our message or the information in proportion with the requirement of the employees at workplace. Sometimes language is very important. Like suppose message, we are writing the message, and message is not being properly formulated, or the mistake, maybe sometimes spelling mistake we find.
Yes.
Or sometimes we may find that grammatical mistake is there. So that also is very important. Is or was, something like that.
Yes.
Maybe suppose not properly being placed in the sentence, it may create a problem. Another, this is very important, that we have to take into consideration listening skill. As an employee or as a manager, we fail to listen. Listening is something which is a very important skill. Like suppose we are delivering you something, this message.
Yes.
And if my students are not attentive, so under that condition what will happen? We are putting all our effort and students are not getting the right information.
Yes.
So attention is very much important. And like probing, asking question, listening has very important component is probing.
Yes.
You can be better listener when you are in a mode of probing. Why sir is telling this, or why sir is communicating this message? That is very important. Many times we find emotional interference also come into the scenario of communication environment, where we find that sometimes people have certain inhibitions and fear. If I will communicate this message, maybe something people might not give the right response, or maybe people might be finding more uncomfortable at workplace. So such thing we must be conscious about it, and accordingly we have to reduce these barriers. We'll talk about all these barriers, how we can reduce. Another is physical distraction also, that counts. The place where the communication interaction is taking place. Those things also we have to take into consideration. Understanding is very important, and understanding, we always talk about in communication, that whether you other side of the or receiver has understood or not.
That is more important.
Mean to say that the meaning has been properly communicated by the sender. So that is very important. So there are certain factors that we need to consider. So first factor is communication climate. Then you find context and setting, very important. Background and experiences of the both of the receiver as well as the sender. What is the background? Because suppose if we are communicating this the communication concept to the layman who has nothing to do with this, he won't find interest, and the message may not be rightly being communicated to the right person. So here what we are doing at this particular moment, we are communicating our message to the right person.
What you have said, even time factor is more important.
Yes.
If I am talking to my senior, my boss, and say I have to see at what time I have to go, because the mood and many factors are taken into consideration.
Yeah, so that is also true. May the context, situation, or
Yes.
my boss might be quite busy.
Yeah.
And he might be engaged in other assignments. So we have to check in before involving into any kind of communication.
Exactly.
That is very important. Mood is, as you rightly said, that mood is also very important. Mood is a kind of a emotional state of the boss, and before maybe communicating anything to the boss, subordinate is communicating to the boss, knowledge is very much important.
Exactly.
When the person is going to communicate, sender as a employee is communicating to the management, he must have sufficient knowledge about the what he is going to share. If the person lacks the knowledge, then he will fail to communicate, and that will likely to influence the understanding
Exactly.
of the person.
Even proper homework should also be done. What we are going to talk and how we are going to talk and what could be the theme of that
Yes, yes.
meeting, and that is more important. So
Yes.
one has to be take into consideration all these points.
Other very important aspect is values, beliefs, culture. Many times it has been found, and especially in the global companies, or especially in the IT companies, you find that the project leader might be in the other part of the world,
Exactly.
and the other team members might be from other cultures. So it has been widely studied, and my students might have already studied in OB regarding values and beliefs.
Yeah.
So those things are very much important. While we are trying to understand certain things, we need to understand the culture of a particular the employee, from where he is belonging, what is his liking, disliking. The belief pattern is also some way or the other influence. In some culture you may find that people have different kind of belief about certain things, about their work. Some people you find they are high on religious belief. So we have to take care of such people,
Yes.
and accordingly we have to formalize our system. So those things are very important, and for a manager especially, he should take care of all these steps or the factors for understanding his or her subordinate or the employees at workplace. Now we come to another barriers that block the flow of information in organization. Closed communication climate. First point is this. Then top heavy organizational structure, long lines of communication, lack of trust between management and employees, and competition for power, status, reward. So first we will try to see. Sometimes you find within the organization there is something where we call people have find a climate is like that. People don't want to share.
Yes.
If you share, then there is going to be some kind of firing from the superior. So there is within the system, closed system is such kind of system is termed as closed system organization, where people fail to share his or her thoughts, ideas, or there is some kind of fear among the employees. That also we have studies have demonstrated. Research, lot of research have been done on this. Likewise, you will find the organizational structure. In the previous slide, I was telling you about the organizational structure, like flat organizations. We are nowadays finding mostly preferred by the organizations.
Even
So,
Professor Mishra,
yeah.
I was reading one article in which it was mentioned that the way the technology is entering in this organization, they have cut off all the barriers. Like they have a software which can facilitate them to interact with the bosses. It's a very different kind of approach.
Yeah.
So the technology is basically like, rather than interacting, they have some software tools by with the help of that they can online interact with them. They have got a chatting facility, they have got a messengers.
Sure.
So with the help of that they are doing that. So up to some extent it had reduced the time, it had reduced the many things, like one has to move through proper hierarchy, but this has eliminated all these things.
Yeah, so technology has its own advantage with the communication pattern, the changing trend we are experiencing nowadays.
Yes, yes.
Technology has given us a platform, so that advantage is always with us. Especially in the traditional company, this kind of the organizations, you may find where the still some way or the other, but they have also now changed.
Yeah, they have.
Like, we can take up the name of many companies, public sector companies, where we find such kind of hierarchical system, and people fail to communicate. Maybe lot of time is wastage,
Yes.
and paperwork and all those things we experience.
One incident is coming in my mind. I have been to one corporate, one office that is situated in Gurgaon. It's a MNC, it's a US based group. So I have been to interact with one people, and rather what we use in general, we used to go and go to the reception and say to them we need to talk to these people, and then they do some, say, with the help of intercom they used to
Yeah.
call the people and say this person is waiting for you. But what I have observed that they are working in the chat messengers and all. Just they have sent the message to them,
Yeah.
and they have told me you should wait over there, and we are waiting for them, and after a 4 or 5 minute, say 1 or 2 minutes, the response has come, and we have been to them. So this is the new kind of approach which is
Yeah.
coming right now.
So we are trying to reduce barriers.
Yes, yes,
This is
that
the
is
role
the-
of the management, especially. We have to reduce the kind of maybe barriers normally we are experiencing at workplace. So that is why we talk about the open
Yes.
system.
Yes.
Open system is very much into practice nowadays, and open door system is there, and anybody can visit even CEO office without taking any permission from the reception. So there are some barriers we have already seen here, like competition for power, status, reward. Those things always you find some kind of politics in the system, and that creates a barrier for transparency in the system. So another additional barriers we are trying to understand, where the barrier need to be reduced in order to make the communication more effective. As I have already told you people that the frame of reference is very much important in taking into consideration. And most of the time we have also found that the people lack communication skill. People don't know how to communicate.
Exactly. That is a very important tool.
That need to be considered, and that need to be disseminated among the
Exactly.
employees at workplace especially. And another thing, we find that people have ego that comes into the, people think that why I should go and talk to such and such people, or this happens normally at the top level. Such kind of experience have been there, but now things have been changed due to the passage of time and the kind of the development in management. We talk about MBO. MBO has become very common, where we are involving the bottom level to come and share their experience, and they should give their own suggestion how we can improve those aspects.
Even you see in a lot of private colleges, where a lot of institutions I am talking, where chairman have a direct interaction with the students.
Yeah.
So it's very tough to interact with the chairman, but they have got the email IDs and other approaches with the help of that.
Yeah.
They are interacting, and they are basically giving the feedback of the faculties, and other approaches are there.
Yeah. So that
So
is
this is going to sometimes this is going to enhance the teaching skills, and many other activities are going to enhance in that case.
Yeah, and it has its own the advantages also for development, or some innovation. Those things can be possible.
Yes, yes.
Otherwise, feedback is, as we have already discussed earlier, that feedback is very important. And feedback, once the feedback loop is complete, then we can think about some development, some change, or suggestion is very much important for the growth of any system. Whether we are talking about the business in a system, or maybe we are talking about social system or family system, it is very important for having right kind of communication. Now we would like to see to it that very interesting this case study, where we find that miscommunication, how this miscommunication takes place. Here you find that Walter is a person who was just about to reach the shore, and at that time how people on the shore they shouted, and the person, hello Walter, the kind of message he is receiving. He is a receiver. Walter is a receiver and he is receiving this kind of message from the shore. But exactly what happened, we would like to see to it. The kind of message was being communicated by the people at the shore. You find that low water. And in the previous slide you find that it was something where previous slide we would like to see.
You can go back and do that.
This is previous and here you find that receiver is getting the message of hello Walter, and on the other slide you find that people were actually want to communicate something else.
Exactly.
That there is low water.
No.
There is a danger and something may go wrong. So sometime it happens. So the context, we have to understand this process, how it happened, actually how it happened. On the other hand, if we go through this process, sender has idea, warn boater. Senders were trying to warn him, and sender encodes message low water. Channel carries message distorted, and receiver decodes message as hello Walter. So this happens that is also very important. The communication, the channel
exactly.
through which we are transmitting the message, and so this this kind of distortion was being created, and so we have to understand the barrier that caused Cronkite miscommunication. First is the frame of reference. Frame of reference is very important. This I have already told you in the previous slide also how this barrier exists. So we have to take into consideration the frame of reference, language skills, listening skills. So here you find that what is this frame of reference? Receiver accustomed to acclaim and appreciative crowds. So this was the condition where the receiver was accustomed to acclaim and appreciative crowd, means he was always expecting that people will welcome him when he will reach the shore. So that kind of thought was there in his mind. Then language skill. Man accent makes water and Walter. So that may somewhat we find the resemblance with the sound, and that created a problem. Then listening skill. Receiver more accustomed to speaking than to listening. That was the problem. So receiver has to listen to it, that what exactly the message is being communicated, and then accordingly he has to decode. Normally we fail to do right kind of listening, and later on we fail to give the right kind of maybe understanding about the concept being communicated. So that is very much important. We have to think twice before trying to make any kind of interpretation about the word or the message that has been communicated. Another very important aspect we will come across this. I am trying to give the analysis of the case, that how exactly may it happen. Another point was emotional interference. Okay, this is something where you find ego prompted receiver to believe crowd was responding to his celebrity status. He was at the back of me, the ego comes into the picture.
Exactly.
He was thinking that people will appreciate, people will give him some warm welcome or something like that, and that was in his mind, and that prompted him to think about that he is like a celebrity or something, and that makes him to come across that kind of words. Hello Walter, hello Walter. Another thing is that physical barriers, noise from boat, distance between senders and receiver. This we need to take into consideration.
Yes.
Physical barrier, normally you find distance, maybe at the shore we find lot of noise.
Yes.
That noise, even at workplace also this happens. Like suppose I want to communicate something, and under such circumstances what happens that maybe we are standing in the production unit, we are at the shop floor, and some machine or may the noise is there, and that also creates some kind of physical barrier to the
Exactly.
may the kind of
There are some
message we are
external factors
communicating.
which are provoking it, so you
Yeah.
are not able to listen at that time. At that juncture, you are not able to listen.
Yeah. So we
So-
while we are sending the message, we must take into consideration that what is the situation, where we are, because normally in under such circumstances, when we are not giving importance to the situation, then we fail to give the wrong message
Hmm.
to the sender due to the barriers which are there,
Exactly.
noise, or maybe the distance. Suppose one person is standing on the other end of the production unit, another person is standing on the other side of the production unit. So those things always we find. So the question which we come across, that which of these barriers could be overcome through improved communication skill. This question normally we overcoming communication skill, how we can overcome
Yeah,
those
that is
communication
very
skills.
important.
Very important. So for as a manager, we are supposed to know this. First thing is that realize that communication is imperfect. It has been widely studied, and it has been found that it is something which is, we go for this kind of information. Adapt the message to the receiver. That is very important.
So when you are talking about that, realize that communication skill is imperfect, that he will get by the follow-up approach. Once you get the feedback from,
feedback is very important.
once you get the feedback, then he will realize that the
Ah.
communication is imperfect.
Yeah.
So that's why the feedback is playing a very vital role.
Feedback is baseline for the whole process of communication.
Exactly.
If as I have shown you in the previous slide also to my students, that may the feedback need to be proper, and that feedback loop must be complete
Exactly.
between the sender and the receiver.
Receiver.
Then it can be a better process of communication. Another very important point is that improve your language and listening skill. This kind of training need to be given to every, may the employees who are there in the organization.
Right.
As a manager, we must see to it
Exactly.
that every employee at the induction level, we have to give them some training that how they have to communicate, because normally it happens that every organization has its own way of the communication
Exactly.
pattern,
Right. Right.
and accordingly we have to make the employee adapt to the organizational setup.
What you are saying that say the listener is a good communicator, but sorry, the sender is a good communicator and listeners are not able to get that.
Yeah.
Say the person who is communicating, he is using a lot of jargons and hard English,
Yeah.
and the person hard language,
Slang.
and which the listener is not interpreting. So in that manner, one has to be very cautious that whatever we are talking about, that has to be very simple.
Yeah.
One should understand that.
That is very important. That is why you find in this slide which I am showing you right now, where you find the last point is plan for feedback.
Exactly.
This is very important. May support all the information which you have mentioned above is dependent on your plan for feedback.
Yeah.
How you are going to give feedback. If you have failed to give feedback, right feedback to the sender, naturally the scenario is going to be quite aversive, and what action has to be taken by the receiver, and you fail to get the right kind of response,
Right. Right.
desirable response. That is very important. So feedback is very important, and we must expect as a manager also, while we are sending any office memo or any kind of message that we are transmitting, we need to have the feedback, and that is the support to the sender, as well as making the communication effective at workplace. Another very important aspect like within this organizational the communication, we have to understand the function of this communication. Function is something which is internal and external.
Very true.
And form, you may find it is oral also, it is written form, oral form. Other is that form you may channel selection dependent on message content, how the message. One thing I would like to share with my students, when you are sending any message, as I have told you earlier also, that the message is what? Message is a collection of words, and message, when we are communicating, along with that we are sending our thoughts, our emotions, our values, beliefs, everything is being communicated, and it is a conditioned stimulus. Message is a conditioned stimulus. When I say conditioned stimulus, it is man-made.
Okay.
It is man-made. So lot of scope is there. While designing and developing message content, there is lot of scope.
Exactly.
So we have to have understanding about how the sentence have to be framed. Sentences are to be framed, and what way the words are to be placed into the sentence to make the communication more effective.
Exactly.
So for making communication effective, we need to consider message content as one of the important, it is going to create an impact on the system. Then we have need for immediate response. That is very important. Normally, once we send any message and we think that okay, normally, as I was telling you, that people bring in their ego, and they think that whatever I have communicated, that is right, and nobody can challenge or nobody can question. This should not be the belief from the manager side or the sender side. We need to get the immediate response from the receiver, that do the person has able to understand, he got the right understanding about the message which I have communicated, I have planned it, I have designed it. So I would like to know immediate response. That is very important. Another thing is that, as I was telling you earlier also, that the distance, in the case itself we have found that distance and the noise and the audience. Another thing is very important is audience size. Sometimes as a manager also, you have to deliver a lecture to a whole group. You have to organize general meeting. So under such condition also we have to take into consideration.
It's a great learning for myself and as far as the learners are concerned. But you know, the time is short, and we have to keep in mind all those things. But nonetheless, it was a great learning, and I hope I was expecting some questions from the learners, since you have talked so much about feedback and follow-up. But anyway, next time when we have got an opportunity to talk about these communications, definitely we will have some two-way interaction from the student end. Students, I hope Professor Mishra had contributed a lot with relevance to communication. He had talked more about the barriers, how to come out from the barriers, follow-up approaches, and more important, he had given more emphasis to this message content, which is a backbone of the communication. So one has to be, it's like a script of the movie. So if the movie script of the movie is good, no doubt the movie will be a hit movie. We have a recent movie, Shah Rukh Khan movie Chak De is there, which have a very good script. So one has to be like that. Their content, their message should be, their table of content should be so rich and so planned. So whenever they are going to communicate, it has to be very easily learned by the student. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Mishra.
Thank you very much.